Cobra Kai revisits old rivals Daniel LaRusso and Johnny Lawrence over 30 years after the 1984 classic Karate Kid. Since its move to Netflix last year, it has become one of the most popular shows on any streaming platform. I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Cobra Kai composers Zach Robinson and Leo Birenberg. Guys, this is such an exciting score to talk about because it's a really delicate balance between sentimental 1980s nostalgia and a newer sound that reflects that the show touches on universal themes relevant to today. So what I'm trying to say is it's super current, but it's also really kind of excitingly nostalgic. So like, Leo, what are your thoughts on that really delicate balance that you guys are treading?
I mean, it was a big universe to inherit, to kind of adopt the Karate Kid and figure out how we're going to continue that story and tell a new story that sort of, pays homage to the previous sound and kind of transforms it in the way that we wanted. So, I mean, when we were starting, the first thing we did was go back to those original movies and kind of listen for what makes it, like, what's the definitive sound of that we thought the audience would connect with, since it's all about the audience. And what we really kind of settled upon was what we think people take from the Karate Kid isn't just the score, which is by Bill Conti, which is amazing, and it's got this whole mysticism element to it, and like a really recognizable palette with some pan flutes and strings and harp. But we actually thought, like, the synth pop songs are like, that's what you think of when you think of Karate Kid. The first thing you say is like, "You're the best around, young hearts," like, and so for us, in designing the sound of the show, we wanted to kind of combine those elements and not just save the synth pop for the actual needle drops. It had to be a part of the score because that's like the lifeblood of the nostalgia in a lot of ways. So from there, it was then kind of fine tuning the lens of it, because especially when you start the show in season one, you're really with Johnny Lawrence's story. And so it was, how do we take that sound and kind of look through Johnny's eyes? There's a lot of hair metal influence. Zach and I frequently like to say, like, that part of the score is what Johnny is hearing in his head when he's like scoring himself. It's as badass as possible. It's what he wants to kick ass to. And so those were kind of the starting points of identifying the sound. And from there, it's just kind of telling the news story and weaving it all together. Zach, what did I miss? I feel like
I think you nailed it.
I nailed it. All right.
Wow. See this collaboration, like, you just work so well together.
I just let Leo do everything.
I love
That's
it.
our collaboration. Very good.
But it's so true. Like, there's so many thematic musical elements to the score in this show. Like, it's actually quite surprising when you listen to it without even watching the show. Like, there's a lot of synth pop, as you say, metal, which I really appreciate. But I think the Japanese classical actually is what I, for some reason, just really, really love the most. It's inspirational, it's evocative, and I'm just wondering, for you guys, maybe I'll go to you first, Zach. Do you turn to one musical element over another depending on who's in the scene or what the scene's about, or when you're trying to evoke emotion? Do you turn to the Japanese stuff maybe when it's more about LaRusso? Talk us through that.
Yeah, that's more or less correct. That's kind of something that we established very early on when composing for the series. Like, we had these three sound environments that we were working with, as Leo already touched upon. Like, we had this very like hair metal influence for Johnny. For the kids, for like the newer generation, we were combining a lot of like synthwave, like modern synthwave, and like EDM elements. You can hear that in a lot of like the dojo stuff with the kids or in high school. And then, yeah, with Daniel, that's where we wanted to harken back to, Leo used this word, like mysticism, this like spirituality that kind of gets conjured up with the Bill Conti score and with that Miyagi. And we found that the palette that we established, which takes some elements of the Conti score, like harp and strings, like pizzicato strings, we were able to really like channel kind of our own sound. And we have, Leo plays actually a lot of the flutes on the score, which is really cool. And we tend to do that type of palette with Daniel's storyline, especially, you know, there's scenes where he goes to Miyagi's tomb, when he's speaking to Robbie in the locker room in season 1. Season 2 has tons of kind of our homage to kind of like karate movies from the 70s and 80s with these like small ensembles, orchestra ensembles. And what has been the most fun that we like to do, and hopefully we'll get to start doing that more in the coming season, which I guess I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but mixing the palettes up. And maybe there's a time when Johnny requires more of that Daniel kind of like pomp or mysticism or something, and we score him with the Daniel palette, and vice versa. So we've created a very fun playground for ourselves.
Yeah, if I may just like tag on to that, like we set up the like the 3 sound worlds, and we would like, it's this amazing launching point, and like after that we just have so much fun being able to like weave them together and do, especially by, you know, if you've seen all 3 seasons, like season 3 is complex and very deep in terms of like the mythology of every character. And so like you suddenly have all these opportunities to, you might, some like one theme might have started in one dojo's world, but it might get orchestrated in a totally different environment. And you have like Miyagi-Do music that's like kind of synth wavy, and you have like hair metal melodies in the orchestra, and it's just created this like, I honestly like palette that we think is really unique to the show. And then that gets us even more excited about like how to explore it more and more, is this kind of 3-pronged like cyclone is, I think we're just really proud of the sound.
I'm so glad you guys raised that, because after 3 seasons, we've finally got these 2 old rivals joining forces against a common enemy in Kreese. And I wondered how you were going to start to really enmesh those 2 musical cue or elements together. And it sounds like that's exactly what you hopefully have in mind. They just finished shooting, actually, as far as we can see on social media, and I've spoken to the creators and they confirm this. So does that mean, and just for the dummies like me, as the composers usually come in at the end now when everything's being shot and they're tweaking things, so have you now seen season 4? What's your process? When do you start working on it?
We actually are going to start next week, if that's if we're allowed to say that. But the process is we will watch an episode. We usually do like 2 at a time, with John, Josh, and Hayden, and our music editor Andres in a spotting session, and we go through, and they have temped the episodes with temp music. That, you know, by the time we get in season 3, a lot of the temp is our score from seasons 1 and 2. But it's never, we never keep it that way. It's just kind of like this is the flavor, or maybe let's use this theme. And then we will take copious notes and discuss with the guys about, you know, the story of every episode and how it fits into the season's arc. And then for each batch of 2 episodes, like Zach and I walk out of that meeting, and each of us is kind of like, hey, I've got an idea for this. I've got an idea for this. And so we don't have a studio together, especially during COVID times. We've, you know, working in our own apartments. And so we'll kind of split up and start working on stuff. And then like 2 days later, start sending ideas back and forth. And pretty much every cue, and there's a lot of music in the show, sort of gets sent back and forth between us, to just pile on ideas, and sometimes just spitball, see what you think of an idea, and hey, send me that. I have a percussion idea. I'm gonna add something. And so we just kind of go back and forth and pile on until things feel like they are good.
And we watch, when we go into spotting, we actually don't like to read the scripts. We like to go in as cold as we possibly can. Sometimes we need to plan something, like, so we need to read the script or watch a cut earlier, but we like to watch it as fans when we spot. So we're watching, and like, I remember when Robbie turns his head around in the season finale of season 3, and he's in the dojo with Kreese, and Kreese goes, "What took you so long?" Like, Leo and I jumped up. This was pre-COVID. Yeah. We jumped up and screamed with like 7 people in the room. We are like huge fans of the show. It gets us very excited when we're like, oh, we're going to score that scene.
You can tell. You can tell you're fans of the show. Like, imagine working on a show that you didn't like. That would be horrifying.
It would be horrifying.
It would be terrible. You know, with a show like yours, your genre, so to speak, I think about other examples where orchestral and electronic music is being kind of fused. Some shows tend to go more electronic, like, say, for example, Kyle Dixon's work on Stranger Things, Matt Quayle's work on Mr. Robot, and in others, like Christopher Lennett's on The Boys, really mix the two genres, so to speak, really beautifully. And you guys do that to perfection. I'd like to know, though, Zach, what do you think about the pros and cons of both styles of music? And is it difficult to mix them properly?
I think it's always difficult. I think like working just with I think it's difficult working as a composer right now because you have access to so many things, and it's actually kind of hard sometimes you need to figure out what like types of sounds you want to use and stick to those sounds and stick to those palettes, because it's very easy to load up another virtual instrument, load up another synth, and get like 7 guitar tracks on there, and then get big drums, which, by the way, we do this, but it is like, we have to, I think, just currently, it's just very easy to do music production. So what we strive to do, it's not always about the sounds and about how much time we spend on getting a sound. To us, it's always about the feeling. And we are very big fans of, like video game music. We grew up on video game music. And I would say that there's a lot of video game soundtracks that blend orchestra and blend hard rock and metal and blend electronics with that as well. But what it does overall is it creates like a very, obviously it's video game music. It's like a very like memorable, like easily loopable, easily like get intoable type of vibe. And that is a big inspiration for us. And we are just always trying to, like, no matter what type of palette we're working with, our number one thing is this making the scene better? Are we getting excited by if we were viewers of this show, would we be getting excited? I think one of the perfect examples of this is in episode 2 of season 3. It's the chop shop fight. When Johnny and Daniel team up, like for the first time they team up. And even just me talking about it, I just get chills because it's so awesome. And that's one of those times where like we watched that and we came out of the spotting immediately. We're like, okay, this is how we score this scene. And it's like, we know the vibe, we know the sounds we're going to use, we know there's going to be string runs, and things like that. Like, so, and drums and bass and guitar. And I think it just takes time too. Like 3 seasons in, we're cruising, but it took a bit in season 1 to figure out kind of how we were going to blend all of those elements. And we're very happy with it now. Very proud of it.
Can I hop in there also?
Yeah, please.
One word that Zach was kind of dancing around, I feel like, but didn't say, is like sincerity. We're like really into the sincerity of how the score plays from the audience's point of view. So like that chop shop fight, like we had been talking about the potential for like the Daniel Johnny team up for the last like 3 years of our lives. And like we're imagining it like, oh, what if they were in some like grisly like environment and a bunch of like goons come out and they're like standing back to back fighting, and it's literally exactly what the universe of Cobra Kai gave us. And so like there's just, I don't know, there's this way to write that scene that is like what you want to hear and cheer along with as the audience, and like to execute it right. Like there's a sincerity there. That is what we strive for in every single scene.
Absolutely.
The other thing that kind of I think helps with the sincerity, especially once you're like a fan and really in the environment, and also is like a huge part of how we mix the palettes together, is the score is like highly thematic. We've probably got like 25 themes for various characters and mythologies and environments and dojos and places that we've been building up since like the very first cue in episode 1, season 1. And so when you are drawing on a theme in any style, in any scene, like it immediately feels right. And so when we are mixing those like the palettes together in sometimes like really severe ways, and we've got like something maybe that's like really EDM-y that we're like adding orchestra to, like because it's all based on those same thematic like material, like I think it just kind of naturally gets executed pretty well. As like from the audience's point of view, because it's like the themes that you are used to, whether or not you can sing them or not, like depending on like you being a musician or whatnot, like it just like gets you excited in the right way.
Yeah. I just had a light bulb moment because it's the sincerity of your score that works for me the most. This is a really funny show as well. It's very fun and funny, but your score is super sincere, and there's no irony really that I can see in there. You're not trying to make fun of these people, or it's really comes from a really genuine place, which brings me to this. So the final, anybody who hasn't seen season 3, go away, watch it, come back, because we're going to do some spoilers now. The final cue from season 3 is Challenger. If I may say, I think it's your best work. I love that track. I wish it was longer.
Oh yeah.
I wish it was.
Yeah.
Chris challenges Johnny and Daniel to a tournament. Johnny and Daniel finally join forces, right? It starts with this gorgeous ambient propulsion, and then it builds to something more muscular, rousing. There's some pensive string stuff in there. Like it's really subtle, but for some reason, like I'll give you this example. I spoke to the creators of your show. That they're amazing guys, and we talked at length about the goosebump moment of that scene. A lot of it has to do with the performance and the writing, but a huge chunk of it has to do with your work on it. So talk us through the track and what were your thoughts? Did you have a goosebump moment when you finally saw the final product? Whoever wants to go first.
That's one of our favorite tracks too.
Yeah, we
absolutely
love that.
Actually, we love that, and I think, yeah, I mean that one. So just we could talk forever about it, but it actually is much shorter on the show, and we actually extended it for the album significantly. Like we made it like 3 minutes on the album, but we could go forever on it for sure. It actually is the motif, that little ambient motif you hear in the beginning, is one of the very first things we ever wrote for Cobra Kai. It's from a track called Awake the Snake, which is track 1 on our season 1 soundtrack. And it actually does not appear in season 1. It didn't end up getting used. But we kind of brought it back for season 3 as we dove into Kreese's origin story, because that is the awakening of the snake in our eyes, is Kreese's origin story. And that starts us out. And our inspiration for that is we always talk about like 80s action movies, but like kind of the end of 80s action movies where like the dust has settled and the smoke is clearing on like this purple neon backdrop, and like Michael Douglas is wearing like a trench coat, and it's like the streets are always the same, like no matter what. And then that's like what our vibe. This is
and it's raining, and like
it's raining. Like this is what it's like talking to me and Leo. That is what we were channeling. Big fans of Tangerine Dream, big fans of Pink Floyd. And this was we wanted a slow build that took us from outside in a Reseda shopping mall into Vietnam, and the connection was this Awake the Snake motif, and we're incredibly happy. And also just shout out to our guitar player on that, Andrew Sinowick, who really makes the track, in my opinion. We love that track, so we love to hear that you loved it too.
Yeah. I love it. I always want to get a pair of aviators out when I'm listening to it. I don't know why. And the other track, finally, before we go, is Jewel of the Snakes. It's one of the longer tracks. I listen to that repeatedly in the car because I'm a nerd. I love it.
Awesome.
Though. It's very
awesome.
Cool. It has hallmarks of classic war films, though. Like Leo, don't you think this is what really interests me? You've got strings, drums, choral sounds, brass. I think there's brass in there. What do you would think that would be anachronistic or out of place on a fun family show about dueling teenagers, but it just seems to work really well. So Leo, why is that? Why do you think it works so well?
There is like there is a scope to the story that at some point, like, you have to just lean into a kind of like classic film score. Like it's almost like a different side of 1980s film music. Like, you know, we talk about the synthwave stuff a lot and hair metal stuff, and like, but we really try to root our like orchestra stuff in the 1980s film score tradition too. And because season 3 is kind of so huge in scope, they go to Okinawa, there's flashbacks to Vietnam, and all of that like huge cinematic build like comes down to this like fight scene that's like 12 minutes long at the end of the season. And I mean, the scope of the story is just insane. It's like one guy's old teacher is now training his son in secret to like betray him while he is like making amends with his old enemy. And there's no way to do that except to just get cinematic is the word for it. And I think the way it sort of goes back to something we were just talking about with like the thematicness of the score. Every single bar of that 11 straight minutes of music is based on one of the themes from the show. Like every single note in there is that type of like symphonic writing. Like truly it is like you blow it all out on all across the full orchestra, and then add our extra elements. You know, we've got the synth sounds that we've been using, and drums, bass, and guitar. There's like an awesome like drums, bass, guitar thing in 5 in the middle of that cue when Kreese and Johnny are like really going at it. And over the top, you've got like 8 French horns playing Johnny's theme from the very first episode, while like the thing the strings are playing is related to like a different theme that we had set up. And it's just this kind of crazy collage of everything to just tell the scope of all the betrayals that are happening on screen. I mean, there's like a father-son fight. It's brief.
I know.
It's insane. I think like you really to buy in with the right kind of sincerity, like you just have to embrace the drama.
Yeah.
Final say, Zach, before we go. Anything else you need to add?
I think Leo, I'm so glad you said the word sincerity, because we use that word all the time, and that is what we live by. And that's why we're so immune to like being called cheesy, because like we embrace whatever cheese is there because it's on purpose.
Yeah.
And like
we're here to have fun, like with the audience and with the characters, like, and
embrace it. Accept it, love it. Who doesn't love cheese anyway? Like, it's awesome. But
it's the best. And we are so fortunate to be able to work with such an amazing crew, the creators, the actors, like the editors, our music team, because it is a massive project, and we're glad that people can see it on Netflix now and see how massive it is, because it was hard to explain to people before, but we're just very grateful to be a part of it. Every year is like just new surprises for us.
Yeah, well, look, congrats on a great season 3. Good luck for season 4. And I'm really happy that many more people are going to experience the show and your work on it. So thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.